Hey all, welcome to the latest Q&A video, the latest channel update. It's been a while since the last one, primarily because I put out some requests for questions and subjects for this video, but the topics took a little while to arrive. But no problem, they are here now and we can get into it. Also, I want to touch on another subject throughout this video, which is the subject of Elite Dangerous and player numbers. Not going to go into too much detail on that because at this point I don't think too many people are all that interested, and will reveal the details on why that is further into the video. Let's get to it then. Now, for those of you who are new to this channel, the format of these videos is that I generally discuss topics and questions submitted by Patreon supporters and YouTube members. So everything we're going to see here are from people who have supported this channel over the years. So again, thank you to all those people. Your ongoing support really does mean the world to me. So yeah, honestly, thank you for that. Without you, this channel really wouldn't be what it is today. We're going to start with Avon over here on Patreon, saying that they like the new format, so thank you for that. That will be the Facecam format. Also live in a beautiful place. I wonder where that is. Referencing this video here that I actually put out is me walking through Dalby Forest. These are the type of videos that I release over on Patreon and in the YouTube members section. So if you're interested in seeing any of this, do check out those Patreon and YouTube links in the video description. At any rate, Yamix recently posted a video on the demo of the Invincible. Wondering if I've looked at it, and what do I think? Well, I haven't looked at it. I have seen some clips of it, and yes, you're right, it does look gorgeous. Something I'd like to take a look at in the future, but time permitting, it's quite difficult to fit all of these things in. Don't know if you've tried the Tilt 5 or not. I was a Kickstarter backer. If you have, I'd be keen to have your thoughts on it. Now, I don't even know what the Tilt 5 is, to be perfectly honest, so let's take a look. Tilt 5 over here on Google. Tilt 5, reinventing game night. We'll bring in holograms home. This looks really impressive, actually. I wonder how that works. Okay, it seems to be some type of augmented reality. Pretty neat. But no, I haven't tried that out. It looks pretty interesting though, doesn't it? I'm going to have a look at that a little bit more later after I've got this video done. Right, moving on to Ken. What career do I think stands out the most in a Microsoft Flight Simulator? Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So for those of you that don't know, Microsoft have moved on from Flight Simulator 2020. They're now building a new version of the sim, which looks like it's going to be releasing next year. They're still going to be updating Flight Sim 2020 as well alongside that. So for a while at least, there's going to be two different updates or two different versions of the sim. What do I think of the future of a Flight Sim 2020? Well, I do think it has a future, at least for the short term. I think Microsoft will support it for a couple of years at the very least alongside Flight Sim 2024. But does seem a little bit strange, doesn't it, that they've got two products existing side by side. Do I think they're going to be massive changes, or will it be copy and paste? I do think there's going to be some big changes here. Two of those will be multi-threading or multi-core support, and another change that they're working towards is putting a lot of the client up on the cloud. They want to reduce the footprint that the client has on local PCs. So those in itself do seem to suggest that Microsoft and Asobo are working towards some pretty big changes for the sim. Do I think the previous players who paid X amount should have some sort of cross progress or something like that? Now, I'm not quite sure what you mean here by the players who have paid X amount. I think regardless of whether players have actually bought Flight Sim or whether they use it on Xbox Game Pass, that yes, player progress should move across to 2024. That would be the player logbook and things like that. Obviously, Microsoft have confirmed that add-ons, anything you've purchased through the in-game marketplace, will be compatible for the most part with 2024. How that's going to work out, we don't yet know, and what it means for third-party content that has been purchased or from third-party websites, we also don't know what it means for that either. Now, do I think it's a bit over-optimistic? I mean, delivering cargo to literally filming tornadoes, those are completely different things. Yes, I do think that Microsoft have set their goals very high with this. They set their goals high with 2020, and for the most part I think they did deliver on a lot of that, although much of it is still outstanding. Things such as seasons, although they may still get that in, still haven't arrived, and of course there's still some performance issues and bug issues that are there for, well, been there since day one really, that they still haven't addressed. Do I think it should have VATSIM features implemented? That's multiplayer, where players can act as ATC. I would like to see that included in the base version of 2024, but being realistic, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a lot of work and a lot of extra development for things that a very small percentage of the audience would actually use. I think VATSIM is a great product, and probably it should stay where it is. Now, talking about the Xbox version of Flight Sim 2020, Xbox-wise, consoles can just about handle Flight Sim 2020, so is it going to be hard and heavy when it comes to 2024? This is an interesting question. There's no signs of any replacement consoles coming just yet, so clearly this update is going to be written for the existing consoles. Microsoft have said they want to reduce the footprint of Flight Sim 2024 by putting a lot of it in the cloud. They've also said that they want to ensure that it works on low-spec PCs. They want to keep the specification requirements very low. This suggests that it will work on the consoles, and to be honest here, I suspect it may even work better if they're going to optimize it further. It could be that 2020 just couldn't be optimized any further than it already had been, and that again, that returns to the point of refactoring the code and essentially rebuilding much of the sim. Let's move on to a few other questions. We've got Avon again here. Thank you for these questions. I'd love to see a side-by-side comparison between Starfield, what we know of, and Starborn 2. What a one-man software team can do compared to teams of hundreds. So yeah, Starborn 2 is it Starborn 2? Spaceborn 2? I'm sure it's Spaceborn 2. Either way, very impressive game there. Don't think it's directly comparable in the sense of the scale and scope, but yeah, for what's been delivered there, it certainly does have a lot of similarities. Not something I can compare off the top of my head, but just maybe it's worth making a video on this in the future, comparing Starfield to other space games maybe. And then we come to Commander Dr. Digital. Are you disappointed that Starfield is a single player only? Well, here's the thing about that. If Starfield has a successful launch, it's not botched, and it's not too buggy, well, it's going to be the next Skyrim, isn't it? And Skyrim was a fantastic game, and yeah, that was single player as well. To be perfectly honest, I would have been very disappointed if Bethesda had made Starfield multiplayer. They're known for single player games. They deliver some fantastic single player games, and that really is what I'm a fan of. So yeah, if they'd gone the multiplayer route, perhaps they could have gone co-op, I don't yet know, but that really would have changed some of the fundamentals of what Starfield is trying to be. For me then, Starfield being a single player game is really what it's all about, and I'm a huge fan of that type of game. Got a few other questions here. We got one from Trip. What is my opinion on player expectations versus player expectations? Player expectations versus developer expectations, rather. Would you say that developers of space games or other games are trying to take their games too far, trying to offer these amazing all-encompassing experiences? Likewise, do I think players are expecting too much from development teams? Well, there's certainly an element of that. I think some games have promised too much too soon. Elite Dangerous is a classic example of that. Back in 2012, David Braben pretty much promised these stars, including ship interiors as well as potentially atmospheric planets as well. And let's not forget, he also spoke about big game and hunting. A lot of things that just never made it into the game for one reason or another. Things happen, that's the nature of development, but you really can't blame players when they want developers to live up to the things they've promised or suggested would be a thing. This has also happened with Starfield. We've seen it happen with a lot of other games as well. But likewise, I think there's also the other side of the coin where players have unrealistic expectations. We're seeing some of that with Starfield. No matter what Bethesda say, and I think Bethesda are doing a reasonable job of managing expectations. For example, they're telling players don't expect too much from planets. Just 10% of planets are going to have life on them, and 90% of them, that's around, 900 planets, are going to be barren and just have resources. Regardless of that, players still have crazy expectations of expecting to see just all these amazing things. Yeah, that's a classic example of players expecting too much. How this all plays out, we'll have to wait and see. I think Bethesda could perhaps do a bit of a better job of managing certain expectations, but we'll have to see. But in terms of general expectations with games, yeah, it's definitely a problem. And I think the problem is with both sides, both with players and with developers. Final set of questions here come from Ipaga. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that right. Ipaga? No. Sorry about that. Possible question to discuss. How long might it take before KSP2 comes close to a modded KSP1? Now this, I think, is a really sad subject, a really disappointing subject. I think at this point KSP2 is never going to live up, well, not in the short term, not in the next few years at least. KSP2 is not going to live up to what KSP1 delivered. Some people will say it took a long time for KSP1 to get to where it was in the final years, and where it is now, and that we should give KSP2 a chance. But the difference here is that KSP2 was launched into early access in a very poor state. It's now around about 5 months, 4.5 months into its release cycle into early access, and so far we've only had 3 patch fixes. And yes, the developers Intercept Games have said that we should expect a slowdown on those patch releases, but so far I think it's slowed down way further than anyone would have expected, and we've got a lot of outstanding problems. Patch 3 has fixed some things, it's also done some performance improvements, but ultimately the game is still in a very bad state. On top of that, we've got the roadmap to contend with. The first big roadmap update would be the science update, and there's not much sign of that appearing anytime soon either. Back in February, I was expecting to see that perhaps around June, July time, but here we are, and it still could be many months away at this point. We'll have to see how that goes. Quite a shame. Moving on to the other question, also for the games industry in general, there seems to be a huge trend of releasing horribly broken games and then slowly patching them to an okay state. No Man's Sky, Star Citizen, Elite Odyssey, Kerbal Space Program 2 in the SimWorld come to mind, but also Last of Us and Jedi Survivor. And I agree, all of these are terrible releases. Some of them, like Elite Dangerous, I believe have done irreparable harm to Elite, the franchise as a whole. Yeah, again, just personal opinion. And the other side of things, you have the likes of No Man's Sky, which released in a bad state, and after a number of years went on to be something very good. So there's a lot of both going on there. But ultimately, I don't know what's going on with the games industry lately, but there are a lot of misfires, far more than there should be. That said, we also have to take into account the number of games that have been fantastic releases. Dead Space, the remake, has been very, very good. Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom is another one, probably a contender for one of my favourite games of all time actually. But as for what players can do to reverse this trend themselves, well, I don't think there's much. Some people will say don't pre-order, but personally I don't think that would make too much difference. What I think would make the difference is if players simply didn't buy the bad games. The problem there is that players have to buy the games first to find out they're bad, so there is that. But other than simply keeping your money in your wallets, I don't really see what else can be done. Okay, so there we have it. That's pretty much all of the questions that I've been asked, all the topics that we're addressing in this particular video. Another thing I did want to very briefly touch on is player numbers on Elite Dangerous. Now, yes, I know, Steam charts, not everyone is a fan of this because obviously it only shows the players who are playing Elite via Steam. It doesn't show people who are directly logged in through the launcher or those who use the Epic Store. But nonetheless, it will be an indication of trends. What is trending on Steam is likely to be the trend elsewhere as well. So as we can see, at the last 30 days for Elite Dangerous, we've got 2,778 players, and last month in June, we've got 2,870 players. Now, if we take this number here, right at the top, the last 30 days, and we scroll down, we can say that this is not only at the lowest average number of players for the past few years, it is also the lowest average number of players on record. Elite Dangerous has never gone this low in all of its years since April 2015, since these records were kept on Steam charts. I think there's one around about 2018 or so, or 2016. Yeah, here we go, 2,883, which is similar, but ultimately, yeah, it's definitely showing a downward slide. We can also look at Steam, Google Trends here, and we can see that again, we're looking at a 5-year window here. The search volume for Elite Dangerous worldwide over the past 5 years is still trending downwards. And if we zoom in to look at that over the last 12 months, we can see again that generally the interest in Elite seems to be fading away. This isn't a criticism, I'm not passing judgment here, just looking at the factual numbers. So yeah, a bit of a sad state of affairs. Either way, do let me know what you feel about this in the comment section below. That does bring us to the end of this video and this channel update. I'm looking forward to the next Q&A video. If any of you are interested in being involved the next time around, then do check out those links in the video description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.